The book of John, chapter 1. We're just going to go there real quick because there's something that just really has meant a lot to me in my journey. And I hope that it will mean something to you as well. How many of you were here before? There was a time before where actually we brought Peter in here and he gave the whole message. Anybody remember that? All right. For those of you who weren't here yet, either the Spirit or my own crazy brain, or maybe a combination of both, decided that I would dress in a robe and wear sandals and put on a fake beard and pretend that I was Peter and give the whole message as a first person from the perspective of Peter. Well, today, I'm actually going to give a similar message on the life of Peter. You see, Peter is somebody that has meant a lot to me because I see so much of my own journey and his journey. And so what we're going to do today, we're going to kind of go rehash some of that story, but not from Peter's perspective, but from Jesus' perspective. What did Jesus see when he looked at Peter? So the book of John, chapter 1, we're going to read starting in verse 40, just a couple verses. John chapter 1, verse 40. One of the two who heard John speak and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which means the Christ. He brought him to Jesus. He brought Simon to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You shall be called Cephas," which means Peter. And you know what that means in English? The rock. The rock. You are Simon, you shall be called Peter. I'm going to call you the rock. Now, something that I want you to understand about biblical names is that every name in the Bible means something, okay? So, it wasn't like they could just throw out, and here's what it also was. It wasn't like you could just throw out nicknames to somebody just because you saw a quality in them. So you couldn't be like, "Oh man, Dwayne Johnson, you're solid. I'm going to call you the Rock." Yeah, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, right? You couldn't just throw a nickname out to somebody. Changing somebody's name was only done by somebody who had significant spiritual authority over that person. And it wasn't just a name change for the sake of changing their names. This person was saying, "I am going to call out a new fundamental identity in you that you didn't have before." So what Jesus is essentially saying to Peter is, he's saying, you see yourself as Simon. You're just a fisherman. You're just an ordinary guy. But when I look at you, I see the rock. I see a foundation that I want to build my church on. Do you believe in Jesus this morning? Amen. Obvious question. What if I told you that Jesus believes in you? What if I told you that just like Peter, he looks at you and he sees not just who you think you are, but he sees something more? So what I'm going to do this morning, what we're going to do together, we're going to imagine what it would have been like the moment that Peter entered heaven. The very moment that he saw Jesus for the first time after this life. Now, I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly how it went, but I do know what the Word of God says about Peter. I know what the Word of God says about Jesus. And so, if you will imagine with me, from Jesus' perspective, when Peter enters the gates. "Well done, Peter. Well done. Well done, faithful one. I knew you could do it. I knew it all along. Ever since I first met you, I knew you had it in you. And what I just saw just now, you were not ashamed of me. You didn't deny me. And you suffered. I know it was hard for you. Well done, Peter. Faithful Peter. Come, I've prepared a place for you. Peter, I always knew you had it in you. I always knew that you were the rock. I knew it from the first time I laid my eyes on you. I knew it from that first time that we met. There you were on that boat as I was walking down the seashore. You were a fisherman. And not a very good one at that, because you were willing to listen to a complete stranger tell you to throw your net somewhere else so that you could catch fish. And by the way, I heard what you said under your breath. I've forgiven you for that, but I want you to let you know that I heard that. But I saw you there. I saw you doing the same thing that you did every single day. More than that, I saw your heart. I saw who you saw yourself as. Just a fisherman. Just a guy with problems who couldn't keep his mouth shut. But I wanted to let you know, when I looked at you, I saw something more in you than what you saw in yourself. And I saw that the first time I laid my eyes on you. And I knew that this guy, this ordinary fisherman, he was not just a fisherman. He was going to be my rock. And I saw that in you the first time I laid my eyes on you. I saw something more in you than you saw in yourself. And so I called you to me. And you dropped everything and you followed me. I think you knew. You knew something. You followed me. And I told you, I'm going to teach you how to become fishers of men. I'm going to take what you know how to do, and I'm going to teach you how to do something for me. I'm going to teach you how to be fishers of men. You are going to be my rock. And that's who you're going to be. I remember that conversation that we had with your friends. When I was asking them, I just thought I would stump them like I always do. That was fun, by the way. Who do people say that I am? I wanted to see what they said. And they kind of like tentatively stumbled on their words. Well, some people say John the Baptist. Some say Elijah. And then I hit them with it. Who do you say that I am? And I'll never forget the fire in your eyes that day when you looked at me. And it was almost like the lights went on in there and you realized what was happening. You are the Christ. You're the Son of God. Yes, Peter. And I knew it. In that moment, I knew that you were starting to get it. You were starting to understand who you were and who I was. And I knew that on this rock, this is the faith, this is the rock that I was going to build my church on. And I knew in you that you had something inside of you that the gates of hell will not prevail against. I saw that in you. Oh, you had your moments. I mean, not even 5 minutes after that conversation, I was trying to tell you guys that I was going to be crucified and raised from the dead, and what was going to happen to me. And you saw fit to rebuke me, like you kind of somehow you knew better than I did what was supposed to happen. And so I turned it around and I rebuked you. But I did that because I believed in you. And I believe in you so much that I couldn't let you keep thinking that you could continue to go and do things your way. I cared about you and I believed in you so much to let you know that even though you thought in your mind how God's plan was supposed to go, I couldn't let you hang on to that. It wasn't going to happen in your way, in your time, the way that you wanted it to do. So I rebuked you because I believed in you. And I wanted you to see it had to happen my way, not yours. But I'll never forget when you walked on water. I have seen throughout history every single father, when their first child takes those steps for the first time, those babies learn to walk and stumble around and find their way to their father's arms across the room. The joy that those fathers have was nothing like the joy that I had when I saw you put your feet on that wave. When I heard you say, Lord, do you want me to come out to you? And I said, yes, Peter, come. You can do it. I believe in you. And you put your feet on the water, and I was so excited to see that you believed for just a brief moment. You believed that anything was possible. And the same spirit that was causing me to do the things that I did was in you as well. But then you took your eyes off, and you looked around, and you started to see your surroundings, and you allowed your natural fears of everything that was around you to fill your mind and to flood your mind. How many times did you do that, Peter? You had your fears, you had your doubts, you had your worries, and you took your eyes off of me. And you let those natural fears, the logical fears, keep you from believing that anything was possible. But Peter, I still believed in you because I knew you weren't done. Over the years, we had so many moments. We laughed, we cried. I saw you thrive. I saw you fail. I saw you do things you never thought you could do, and then I saw you get in your own way. You made me laugh, and you made me angry, And sometimes you did both of those things at the same time. But I believed in you. I believed in you so much. And I didn't stop believing in you when you denied me. I remember that night. I remember after dinner, I could see it. I could see the war over your soul at that moment. I could see the tension you were feeling. I could sense the darkness coming over you. And I said, Peter, I wanted to warn you. Satan has demanded you that he could sift you like wheat. But I'm praying for you. I'm praying that your faith will not fail. And when you turn back, that you can strengthen your brothers. You said to me, Lord, even if I had to die for you, I won't deny you. Peter, before the rooster crows 3 times, you're going to deny me that you know me. We went out in the garden. You fell asleep. You thought you were strong. I understand. How many of my children have thought that they were strong only to fall down and to give in to the natural? But then they came for me. And you thought you had to be the hero because you still thought things had to be done a certain way. You didn't understand what God's plan was. And lucky for us, you were absolutely no good with the sword because instead of killing the guy, you just cut off his ear. And me being who I was able to fix the guy's ear. But you still thought that things had to go a certain way. And when they didn't go away that way, when I was arrested and I was put on trial, you didn't understand. And then they started asking you. It started with a little girl, and then the others came, and by the time it was over, you were swearing and yelling at them, I swear to you, I do not know the guy. And I remember, you won't forget that look when our eyes met. Peter, my rock. You thought that at that moment that you had blown it. So you see, your mistake was you thought that I needed you to protect me, when the reality was you actually needed me. Even in that moment. Even in the moment where I was being crucified, you still needed me. And we still could have made it right, but you went off by yourself. You isolated yourself. You separated from everybody, and you wept. And you felt sorrow, and you beat yourself up. And that whole weekend, you agonized, thinking that it was over, thinking that you had the one chance that was the best chance that you ever had, and thinking that you had blown that chance. But what I wanted you to know at that moment is I never stopped believing in you. No matter how bad you thought that you had screwed up, I never stopped believing in you. And I wanted you to know that. And when I came back to life, I had so much anticipating seeing you and being able to show you that I was still alive and that you still had another chance. And so back onto that seashore where we saw each other again. I remember you had your net, you were out fishing all night. You had not caught anything. Seems to be kind of a theme with you. And so I said, why don't you try tossing your net over there? And immediately you knew that it was me. And you came swimming over. You didn't even want to wait till the boat got there. You jumped in the water and you swam over to me. And we're so glad to see each other again. But Peter, I knew that we still had to have that other conversation. Simon, son of John, do you love me? I couldn't call you Peter because you weren't being the rock in that weekend. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Do you love me? And I knew what you thought you knew. Yes, Lord, of course I love you. I had to ask you the question 3 times because I needed you to hear me say, feed my sheep. I needed you to understand what I was trying to tell you. When you were young, you could just put your clothes on and go wherever you wanted. But there's coming a time when somebody is going to take you by the belt and drag you somewhere where you don't want to go. But I believe in you. Do you trust me? Can you trust me that even though you're going to go somewhere that you don't want to go, that I still have a good plan for you? Because I believe in you, and I want you to follow me. Those next 10 days after I left. I'm sure they seemed like 10 years for you, but you were faithful. You stayed there. You kept praying. You didn't move. You didn't leave. And you stayed there with the brothers. You prayed. You asked God. And you were trying to figure it out. And I was amazed at your faithfulness. So when I sent my spirit down to you, oh, that was a proud moment. That was your defining moment. Of all the times that you had failed, all the times you had denied me, when my spirit came down upon you, you were fearless. And I knew that fearlessness, that brazenness that was in you, that finally you had found a way to use that for God's glory. And you preached that sermon. You went out and you preached your heart out. And how many thousands of people came to know me because of you? I had believed in you. And at that moment, I was like, yes. I turned to my father and said, do you see that guy? You see what he's doing right there? That's the guy that I saw on the shore. And he was just a fisherman. But that's what he was capable of. And we knew it. And I had never stopped believing that was what you were capable of. Because I believed in you, Peter. Well done, Peter. And you didn't stop there. You healed people. You brought people back from the dead. You kept preaching. And you even went into the hostile place where they didn't even want to hear the gospel. And you preached. And you took my good news to places that you had never even dreamed of going. Because when I believe in you, you do things that you never thought possible. And you go places that you never thought you would go. And that same fear that sank you when you were walking on water was gone. And then when it was time for you to give your life, how courageous you were, Peter. Peter, I'm so proud of you. I believed in you, and I knew you could do it. Well done. Well done, Peter. Church, this morning, the question I want to ask you, do you know that Jesus believes in you? You see, Peter wasn't some superhuman guy that is like some kind of heroic person. Do you understand who Peter was, or who Simon was when Jesus first met him? He was a nobody. Today, church, what I want to tell you is that when Jesus looks at you, he sees so much more than who you think you are. Jesus believes in you. He doesn't you look at yourself and you say, you know what, I'm just a teacher, or I'm just a mom, or I'm just a mechanic, or I'm just an engineer, or I'm just this, or I'm just that. No, you're not just anything. You are a child of God. You are redeemed by the blood of Jesus. And he said that your life was worth the life of his son. And you were called to be a part of his kingdom. And he believes in you. He desires to give you his spirit because he believes in you. You're not just this or just that, because he can take what you have, just like he called him to be a fisher of men. You can teach, okay, I can use that. You can do this. You have this skill. I know what we can do with that. He sees something in you that you don't see in yourself, and he is ready to call those things out of you and to allow you to begin to use those things, not for what you think they need to be used for, but for his kingdom. And yes, you're going to get tested. You're going to probably stumble and fail too sometimes. But what I want you to understand is even if you stumble, even if you fall, he doesn't stop believing in you. He doesn't stop believing in you. God's belief in you and God's ability to do something amazing in your life does not stop with your failure. In fact, in many cases, it starts with that. Because you couldn't do it on your own anyway. And when Jesus fills you with his spirit, you have the capability of going places you never thought possible of going, of doing things that you had never thought possible doing. So this morning, church, what I want us to do is to begin to see ourselves not as we've always seen ourselves. I'm just a teacher, I'm just a mom, I'm just a failure, I'm just a nobody, I'm just this, I'm just that, I'm just that. Whatever you fill the blank in when you see yourself. I want you to start to ask the question. In fact, let's do it right now. Ask the question, Jesus, what do you see when you look at me? What do you see when you look at me? I can guarantee you 100% that whatever your image was before, God's perspective of you is much, much, much more amazing. Can you hear his voice this morning? When I created you, when I formed you in my image, I rejoiced over you. I looked at you and I said, look what we created. You think that moms and dads, when they have a baby, that they have joy? That is like a very, very tiny fraction of the joy that I had when you were born. I believe in you. I believe in you. We're going to have the worship team come up, and we're just going to spend a few moments in this mindset. For some of us, Jesus believes in us today, and some of us need to do a little bit of repair work from the words or the actions of somebody else. Who prevented us from being able to see ourselves as God sees us. Some of us have a very, very distorted view of ourselves. And we've let other people tell us who we are. We've been answering to the wrong voice. And we've been worried about what the wrong people think of us. This morning, can you hear God's voice? Can you hear him calling to you? I don't think he called on a cell phone, but that was pretty interesting. Maybe it was. But can you hear his voice this morning? I can do more things in you than you ever thought possible, than you ever dreamed of. But you have to let go of what you think you know. For some of us, we have to let go of what we think God's plan is. We have to stop telling God what he has to do and start asking God what he wants to do. Some of us have found an identity that we think is important. Maybe you're a boss or a CEO or you've got some authority. And what God says to you this morning is like, you're kind of like a kid building a sandcastle. You just happen to be able to build the biggest sandcastle bigger than the other kids. But I can teach you to build things bigger than sandcastles. God, what do you see when you look at us? God, we worship you this morning. We know that you did amazing things in Peter's life. We know that Peter's not just some icon put up on a pedestal for us to be in awe of. He's a life just like us. God, speak to us this morning. Show us your heart for our lives, God. For some of us that have been hanging on to something, whether it's a habit or an activity or a way that we've looked at ourselves, help us to let it go this morning. For some of us, you may have given us a dream, and all our lives we've been saying, no, that's too big for us, that's too big for us. And you're saying, yes, that is too big for you, but it's not too big for me. Some of you, God's calling you to do something. He wants to bring the good news to a place that only you can bring it. That He's put you in a place that somebody can find His light in their dark world. And He's put you there in that person's life. Maybe you've been too scared, or maybe you've just been too busy, you didn't even notice. But can you hear God's voice calling to you? I've got amazing things in store for you.